Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is James Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're talking about my hidden gems for Week 10 of the 2021 fantasy football season. After the snap that occurred on Thursday Night Football, many of us began to realize that prospects like McKissic, Marquise Hollywood Brown, and Devontae Freeman had vanished from our fantasy lineups as they did not produce up to their expectation. But not only were those players going to vanish from our lineups, little did we know that players like Alvin Kamara, Nick Chubb, Damian Harris, Julio Jones going to the injured reserve, and of course Robert Woods with a season-ending ACL injury were going to vanish as well due to the snap. In order to go ahead and bring back our stud fantasy lineups, in order to give ourselves a chance to win in Week 10, we need to go ahead and reassemble the fantasy football gauntlet by collecting these 6 hidden gems across the many multiverse, the many timelines, and the many different teams that we'll be finding them on. To help us accomplish this and find hidden gems on 6 different teams that currently are being started in less than 50% of fantasy leagues right now, we're going to be using the help of Underdog Fantasy, a superhero in their own right. If you guys haven't checked out Underdog Fantasy, of course, they're another way to play fantasy football, whether it is their weekly contests, their Sunday battle royales, their pick'em slips. Again, I'm going to be going ahead and drafting a team and putting together some pick'em slips at the end of the episode. I've kind of caught some fire as of this week. Hopefully, you can tail and find some success there this upcoming weekend. If you sign up using promo code Andrew today, Underdog Fantasy is willing to match up to $100 of your first deposit, an extremely generous offer. You drop 100, they're going to give you 100, get you ready to win some cash this upcoming weekend. Now, to find these 6 hidden gems, I had to, of course, look at the variety of things that I've done in the past, because last week's hidden gems were certainly a little bit of a mess, and everybody just kind of flubbed, which was really ridiculous. And I went and thought, okay, well, if you want to go ahead and find the most potential for success, you have to find players that are currently being undervalued, perhaps sitting on benches, perhaps even sitting on the waiver wire, and find these players that are going to give us a chance, because their opportunity in terms of total touches is going to be far more than they typically see on a weekly basis. And I think this is going to be the case for these 4 given prospects. Before we begin, I want to thank you guys for supporting the channel. If you have not yet already, we are close to 60,000 subscribers. That is our goal. So go ahead and click that button. We're making fantasy football content for the entirety of the 2021 season in order to help you win a 2021 fantasy football championship. Thank you very much. All right, let's begin by talking about the Power Stone. Instead of decimating Xandar, we have seen as the week has progressed that Alvin Kamara's knee is decimated, as he is not going to be playing this week due to the snap taking him out. But the player that is going to be filling in as the starting running back of the New Orleans Saints is none other than Mark Ingram. And luckily, somehow, someway, the New Orleans Saints knew to go ahead and trade for Mark Ingram, because he was going to be of service this year, and probably more than we actually anticipated. With Alvin Kamara going out this upcoming week, there is a potential of, Alvin Kamara's this year already averaged 22.25 touches per game and 17.75 fantasy points per game in just a half PPR scoring format. There's a lot of opportunity in terms of total touches and potential fantasy points that are up for grabs this upcoming week. And I think Mark Ingram, who is currently only being started in 37% of leagues, that is really low in comparison to the however many people have Alvin Kamara. If you have Alvin Kamara, I think it is an absolutely fantastic idea to not only fill in Mark Ingram into your lineup, but of course reap the rewards of that. Mark Ingram's coming off of a week in which he had 9 carries, 43 yards, extremely efficient there, 5 targets, and was able to catch all 5 of those targets for 21 yards and 8.9 half PPR fantasy points. Now, when I think of the New Orleans Saints offense, besides the incredible opportunities the starting back is going to get, we have to remember that this entire offensive scheme has revolved around the running back position for quite some time now. Whether we go back to Pierre Thomas, Darren Sproles, Reggie Bush, this backfield's always been about throwing the ball to their respective running backs and getting them targets and getting them out in the open in order to make plays. And luckily, Trevor Siemian as a starting quarterback of the New Orleans Saints is certainly going to help Mark Ingram in doing this. Besides the fact that Mark Ingram had 5 targets last week, Alvin Kamara had 7 himself. So with 12 targets going to the running back position, I think there is a very good possibility in which we see Mark Ingram reap the rewards of not only being just a, first and second down back, being a goal line back as well, but being a third down back who is going to get receptions and go ahead and creep his overall floor of production higher and higher as the entire game goes. This upcoming week, they have to play against the Tennessee Titans defense, and though they aren't the easiest matchup on the list, they're still giving up 18.48 fantasy points per game on average in a half PPR scoring format to opposing running backs. This season alone, they have given up 16 or more fantasy points to opposing running backs on 7 of the 9 teams that they've played against this season. The only teams that weren't able to surpass 16 points were Kansas City and Buffalo, with those respective running backs who, again, have been in a flux and a mess as of the last couple of weeks. Nonetheless, I think this is a very advantageous matchup. The opportunity is certainly going to be there. Mark Ingram, guy that should be played this week as the Power Stone. As we move on to our next hidden gem, we have Marvin Jones Jr. I have a lot of hope that Marvin Jones is going to find success this week, and I understand why he's currently only being started in 32% of leagues. If you just go back to his last 3 games, of course, the opportunity has not been there, and the production has certainly not been there. But luckily, he gets to play against one of the easiest matchups at the wide receiver position, the Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts are currently giving up the 5th most points to opposing wide receivers on average on a per weekly basis in a half PPR scoring format. On top of that, they've given up the 5th most receptions to opposing wide receivers. They've given up the 6th most receiving yards to opposing wide receivers, and have given up the most receiving touchdowns, 15 total this season already. I mean, when we talk about the performances that we have seen against this defense in just this season alone, between the first 9 weeks, I mean, it is unbelievable. Besides the fact that we start from the beginning of the season, Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf both having incredible games. Metcalf 60 yards and a touchdown. Lockett 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. We then see Cooper Kupp go for 163 and 2 touchdowns. Devontae Parker 77 and a touchdown. Marquise Hollywood-Brown 125 and 2 touchdowns. It didn't even stop there. It has continued to pour on them. Brandon Cooks 9 catches, 89. Deebo Samuel 100 yards and a touchdown. We saw A.J. Brown go for 10 catches, 155 and a touchdown. And most recently, we saw Elijah Moore go for 7 catches, 84 and 2 touchdowns. This defense cannot stop a soul. Their corners are struggling heavily. Their secondary has been beat up and just not healthy all season long. And I think there's a very good possibility in which a division rival like the Jacksonville Jaguars can come into town and go ahead and put a quick number on this defense, because Marvin Jones, in comparison to the rest of the threats on this offense, is really the biggest red zone threat. Without DJ Chark there, pretty much spread the field on the other side, it has been difficult for Marvin Jones, but nonetheless, he is the number 1 on this offense. And I think there's a lot of potential for him this upcoming week as the space stone and as our deep threat. We're moving on to D'Ernest Johnson, running back of the Cleveland Browns. Going into this upcoming week, the reality of the situation is that D'Ernest Johnson is literally the only healthy running back on this team. Nick Chubb is out. Demetric Felton is out. And of course, Kareem Hunt is still on the injured reserve and out. When I look at the Cleveland Browns as an offense, they are currently running the ball to their respective running backs 26 times a game. That is an incredible number and a boatload of opportunity for a running back who is currently only being started in 49% of leagues. I mean, at this moment when I'm recording this, I go and look at that stat and think to myself, how is it possible that there are 100% of teams starting Nick Chubb and they think to themselves, yeah, it's probably not a good idea to start D'Ernest Johnson. Let's be honest. D'Ernest Johnson, the last time we saw him when he was a starting running back of this Cleveland Browns football team against Denver on that Thursday night football game, 146 rushing yards, a rushing touchdown, 2 catches on 2 targets, 22 yards, and 23.8 half PPR fantasy points. There's a lot of potential here, and with so many touches up for grabs, I mean, by all means, D'Ernest Johnson is a must-play going into this upcoming week. Now, when you play against the New England Patriots, yeah, it may be a difficult matchup, but they're still giving up the 14th most points to opposing running backs thus far this season on average. And to be honest, that's 21.16 fantasy points per game. Though this defense has certainly given up points to opposing running backs, it has mainly been via yardage. They've only given up 3 touchdowns this season. Now, I'm not really too worried about that because the offensive lane of the Cleveland Browns is their entire offense. They're going to impose their will on that defense. But where running backs have truly succeeded against the New England Patriots are in the receiving game. Specifically, the New England Patriots have had running backs targeted against them 78 times, which has led to 61 receptions and 593 receiving yards. Those are amongst the top 3 in every single category amongst all teams in the National Football League, running backs versus a respective defense. This defense gets torched via the passing game. And if, in fact, D'Ernest Johnson is the only healthy running back on this team, well, I can absolutely expect to see a couple screen passes going in his direction, a couple checkdowns that is going to lead to his overall success. Typically, the New England Patriots, they just don't even play in the flat. They do not play in the flat in any capacity. They want quarterbacks to check it down, and hopefully, D'Ernest Johnson is going to benefit from that this upcoming week. I think D'Ernest Johnson and the reality of the current situation for this Cleveland Browns backfield leads to him absolutely being a play this week, and a great one at that. Moving on to the time stone as we talk about J.D. McKissic. As I've looked at the millions of different possibilities and outcomes, dread it, run from it, destiny arrives all the same when we talk about this week's time stone. J.D. McKissic is coming off of a bye week, and he takes on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. And the reason why I wanted to first and foremost mention that is because, again, when teams play against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, there are 1 or 2 things that is guaranteed. Number 1, it is going to be difficult to run the ball. Whether you find success or not isn't something that I'm really putting out there. I'm saying it's just going to be difficult to run the ball, first and foremost. Then secondary to that, you're typically going to lose to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as they are going to score a bunch of points. Now, if both those things continue to be true, as we have seen over the last couple years here, then, of course, the receiving game is going to have to be a factor for the Washington football team, considering, again, this season alone, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, against the running back position, they've been targeted 64 times, leading to 57 receptions, 329 yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns. There's been a lot of success against this team from receiving backs. So I think there's a very good chance going into this upcoming week. I honestly do prefer J.D. McKissic over Antonio Gibson in almost any scoring format except for standard. There's going to be a good week here for J.D. McKissic, and I'll tell you exactly why. Time is such a valuable variable to this entire scenario because J.D. McKissic has been good every other week. And what exactly does that mean? Well, he has literally been good on every single even week this year. Week 2, 4, 6, and 8. Luckily, we play in an even week, week 10 this week, in which hopefully J.D. McKissic is going to ball out. But in those even weeks, J.D. McKissic has averaged 15.13 fantasy points per game in a half PPR scoring format, finding a bunch of success. I think this is another one of those weeks in which he's going to find success. He's currently only being started in 15% of leagues, which is brutally low. He's absolutely a play that I would potentially even go after if, in fact, he's available in your waiver wire to immediately start him in the flex position and find success this upcoming week. J.D. McKissic and the Washington football team running back is our time stone. Moving on to Tyler Johnson, wide receiver for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And we talk about the Soul Stone because typically the Soul Stone requires a sacrifice. And though it is unfortunate to hear, Antonio Brown's going to be out. Rob Gronkowski is going to be out. Scotty Miller is still out. And there is a possibility that by Sunday morning, we have word that Chris Godwin may even be out. At this current moment in time, when I'm recording this video, there is no word on whether or not Chris Godwin is going to play. And to be honest, he has not practiced this week. So chances are we may see a scenario in which Mike Evans is the only stud wide receiver out there. And of course, they will rely upon the running game with Leonard Fournette, but they'll look to other receiving options, whether it is an O.J. Howard or Tyler Johnson. And that is why I wanted to mention him as this week's Soul Stone, because the sacrifice that is being made of a Chris Godwin or an AB is going to lead to success for this young wide receiver, a second-year player that is currently only being started in 2% of leagues. I know many of you have asked me questions about him throughout the week, whether it is in the comment section, via the Discord, via DM on Twitter, or just, during the live stream that we had on Thursday night. Either way, he's coming off a week in which he had 6 targets, 5 receptions, 65 receiving yards, and 9 fantasy points. I can't help but think if he is literally the number 2 wide receiver of this team, in an offense that is literally throwing the ball more than any other team in the National Football League, they're literally throwing the ball 44 times per game on average. I think they're going to light it up against Washington, which is one of the easiest matchups at the wide receiver position. Tyler Johnson has a boatload of upside as a number 2 wide receiver potentially this upcoming week for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We move on to our final option here. It is Alex Collins and the Mind Stone. With the information that Chris Carson is not going to play this week, it leads me to believe that Alex Collins is certainly going to be a decent play. Currently only being started in 7% of leagues. It makes me, kind of question why people are avoiding Alex Collins. I understand he hasn't had the most success as of late, but between weeks 5 through 8, he has averaged 16.25 touches per game. If he's going to get that kind of opportunity, very seldom in the National Football League do we see running backs, given that opportunity. And going into this week, in which may be his final week as a starting running back for the Seattle Seahawks, if Chris Carson is to potentially return, well, he has a pretty decent matchup in my opinion, playing against the Green Bay Packers. And though the Green Bay Packers defense aren't one of the easiest matchups on a given week, they've certainly given up their fair share of points. They've given up 9 touchdowns to opposing running backs this season. They give up 4.18 yards per carry, and as a whole, 19.04 fantasy points per game. When I look at the games that they have already played this season and the points that opposing running backs have scored, New Orleans 22.4, Detroit 15 points, San Francisco 10.4, Pittsburgh 18.1, Cincinnati 28.8 against this defense, Chicago 18.2, Washington 14.2, Arizona 28.6, and Kansas City last week 15.7. Again, that's all double-digit points always. If you're going to be the starting running back of the Seattle Seahawks offense, and as much as Pete Carroll loves to establish the run regardless of Russell Wilson being there, of course there's going to be success. And in fact, maybe even more success as they'll find themselves in the red zone more often than in comparison with Geno Smith. I know Alex Collins is questionable, dealing with a groin injury. He's dealt with a hip injury. He's been injured, but the thing that continues to stand true is that he comes into games and he continues to ball out. And he's given the opportunity and he tries his very best. And to be honest, that's all I could ask for. And I think with the opportunity that he is given, he's going to find success this upcoming week. Cursed with knowledge, I think Alex Collins is a great play for this week's Mind Stone. Now that we've covered our 6 hidden gems, before I go ahead and pull out the fantasy gauntlet, I'm just looking over at it right over there. I want to go ahead, Put together some pick'em slips. Of course, draft a team for this upcoming Sunday's Battle Royale via Underdog Fantasy. Again, if you guys use promo code Andrew today, Underdog Fantasy is willing to match up to $100 of your first deposit. Again, that is an extremely generous offer. So let's go ahead and let's check that out. All right, as you can see on screen, we are here at UnderdogFantasy.com and looking at their pick'em slips. If you go down to the description of the video and click on that link, you can go ahead and even travel to the site. Don't even have to sign up yet and just check out the pick'em slips and see if there's anything that interests you. For example, Tom Brady currently sits at a 0.5 rushing yard over under slip. If you think he is going to get less than 1 rushing yards and get himself 0 or negative yards, you pick the under. If you think he'll get at least 1, you pick the over. And if you're able to go ahead and string together 5 of these specific over-under slips together and accurately predict them, well, you can 20 times your overall money, which is unbelievable. So that's exactly what we're going to go ahead and do. I'll put together some of these slips, give you guys my thought process on them, draft a team for this upcoming weekend's Battle Royale, and see how we can dominate the fantasy football landscape. So beginning with this team in this game really quickly, I do think this is a very enticing number. In terms of his overall yardage, he has sometimes surpassed it, and there's a very good chance that he does so once again. We'll have to wait and see. But, a couple weeks back, I do remember he kneed the ball and lost some yardage there, and that could have obviously affected him. That's going to be the case once again. Could be something of a detrimental scenario for Tom Brady. But nonetheless, the first player that I want to mention is J.D. McKissic. Over 45.5 rushing and receiving yards. That is an automatic over in my opinion. We just talked about the reasons why. He is certainly going to be given a lot of opportunity this weekend, so he's automatically an over in my eyes. Now we continue to scroll down. I think about this Pittsburgh Steelers game, and I think to myself, well, if Deontay Johnson's literally going to be the only healthy wide receiver there with Juju Smith-Schuster out, and now Claypool dealing with a toe injury, well, Deontay Johnson in the over for 75, total yards. I think, in my opinion, that is a smash play there. We continue on looking at some of these other overall prospects. Now, some of these are going to be extremely difficult to predict, like whether or not Zacchaeus goes over 25 yards. He could literally do that in one singular play. But again, let's not forget, there's a lot of, instability at those kind of receiving options. There's a lot of these players that currently just don't play enough to where they constitute a grab in these scenarios. But we'll continue to scroll down here, looking at some of these other props. I do like D'Ernest Johnson. The yardage there, dude, that is like fringe level. I think he could score a touchdown with those kind of yards and get himself enough receiving yards. I'm going to stay away from that right now. Maybe I go ahead and scoop back to that as we progress throughout the video. Dawson Knox, 2.5 receptions. That's tough. I think Cole Beasley in the receiving over here is kind of a smash. I know he'd struggled heavily last week because, again, a lot of those receptions just weren't very far away from the line of scrimmage. But I think very easily you could take this Beasley over and find a lot of success there. We'll continue to scroll on. Marvin Jones Jr. Again, we want to talk about hidden gems. Let's put him in there because he is, in my opinion, another one of these great plays. In fact, you know what? Let me go ahead. Let me scroll through this. Let me find some hidden gems throughout. Really? Christian McCaffrey, 44 receiving yards? They don't think P.J. Walker's going to throw him the ball? I think he absolutely will. Oh, that's actually a good play right there, in my opinion. Let me go ahead. Let me look at the rest of these guys. Where's Alex Collins at? Alex Collins not out here? Okay. We're going to hopefully hope that he pops up in the next couple hours, because if he does, I'll go ahead and potentially take his over there. But let's go ahead and let's just scroll back up to the top here. Again, there's a lot of slips to be played, and even if you want, you could play the NBA tonight. There's a lot of potential player props for just, the NBA itself. So there's a lot of fun to be had here for those of you who are interested. But let's go ahead. Let's put together this. You know what? To be honest, let's get rid of the third leg there, and let's just go ahead and make a $5 bet here. Try to triple our money overall with 2 of these hidden gems options. So J.D. McKissic and Marvin Jones both going over on their total yardage, receiving and rushing and receiving. I think that's an easy play there. We'll play that. Now, let's go ahead and potentially try to put together a 5-leg parlay. This is certainly going to be difficult, but I'm going to go ahead and play it a little bit differently. Obviously, you got to choose responsibly, but I'm going to play it a little bit differently. I want to play the rivals section here. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the rivals, it's basically pitting 2 players against one another and predicting who is going to have a higher set of total yardage. For example, Leonard Fournette rushing yards. Yes, they give Antonio Gibson an extra 16 yards, but I think Leonard Fournette is definitely going to surpass him in this given category. We continue to move on. Whether it is Pat Freiermuth or a Deontay Johnson, they're giving Pat 37 yards. That is certainly something that I definitely don't want to touch in that regard. Russell Gage versus Amari Cooper. They're giving Russell Gage 9 yards. I don't think Russell Gage can be trusted. I'll take the Amari Cooper leg there. Let's continue to scroll down. CeeDee Lamb versus Kyle Pitts in total receiving yards. You're telling me that they think that Kyle Pitts can go over CeeDee Lamb's yardage? Dude, I'm thinking this is a Dallas Cowboy weekend. Let's go ahead. Let's throw in another Cowboy there. Continue to scroll down. Passing yardage between Trevor Lawrence and perhaps Carson Wentz. That could be something that we have to look into. Let's see. What does Trevor Lawrence's passing yards look like? They've kind of scaled down as of late, while Carson Wentz has actually kind of not been that great either in terms of passing yards, considering they run the ball so often. Jamal Agnew having more receiving yards than Marvin Jones. Give me the Marvin Jones leg there. And let's go ahead and let's close out today's video by figuring out who our final piece of this puzzle is. Keenan Allen or Justin Jefferson total receiving yards. My only concern is that Justin Jefferson could do it on one play and just get it over with. And that could be certainly something that's scary in that regard. What else is there here? All right, how about this? I like the idea of taking Tim Patrick over Courtland Sutton. So now that I've gone ahead and done this, so I'll take Tim Patrick getting 11 yards against Courtland Sutton, Marvin Jones with a 7-yard deficit against Jamal Agnew, CeeDee Lamb with only a 4-yard deficit to Kyle Pitts, Amari Cooper taking a 9-yard deficit in comparison to Russell Gage, and Leonard Fournette getting, of course, a lot of touches as of late. If this team is going to be forced to run the ball, I don't think this New Orleans number happens because, again, Washington is not a New Orleans defense. We're going to see up in the 80 numbers, and I don't know if Antonio Gibson is up for the task, especially against such a tough run-stopping defense like Tampa Bay. If we go ahead and make a $5 bet here, we get 20 times our money to $100. I mean, let's go ahead and let's give it a shot and see what we can put together. I want to go back, check out the final, maybe one more slip here that I could potentially eke out. Just want to look at these totals and see exactly what is a great play here. I honestly think if Corey Davis could very easily surpass that number. It's just a matter of what the heck Mike White looks like this upcoming week that makes it such a difficult task to go ahead and automatically play that. Dalvin Cook over 115 total yards. I'll automatically take that. He plays against the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers, they themselves are giving up over 100 rushing yards per game on average this season. Dalvin Cook, an automatic play there in my opinion. When I look at some of these other things, to be honest, I don't even mind Tyler Conklin. Look at his receiving yards, 71, 57, and 45. He plays against one of the easiest matchups at the tight end position against the Los Angeles Chargers. By all means, this may itself be a good play to get 37 overall yards there. Not bad. But personally, I'm going to take Mike Williams here. I think Mike Williams is kind of being undervalued this week at a pretty significant margin. And we'll go ahead. We'll put those two together. Is there another wide receiver I feel extremely confident about? Maybe we take the Deontay Johnson leg. We'll throw that in here. We'll go ahead and go over on all three of these plays. Try to turn that into $30, see what we can come of it. All right, so those are some of the pick'ems I'm going to go with. Whether you decide to trail or fade, it is up to you. You could probably go under on all three of those other plays and potentially find some success there because I have been off at times. But what I've kind of been fire at as of late is definitely drafting teams. So I'm going to go ahead and put together a draft in which, of course, we're going to travel to the main screen of Underdog Fantasy and get into one of these Sunday Battle Royale contests. It's a $5 buy-in, and the prize pool is $60K. Again, it is going to pretty much entail all of the teams that are in that Sunday slate, except for the Sunday night game and Monday game. So let's go ahead. Let's hop in here. Let's go ahead and potentially draft a team here, find ourselves some success this upcoming weekend. So as you can see here, we are currently drafting from the number 6 overall position. There are 6 teams here. The entire concept of this is to draft a team in which you have 1 quarterback, 1 tight end, minimum of 1 running back, and 2 wide receivers, and 1 flex position, and go ahead and compete against thousands of other entries. So of course, sitting at the number 6 spot, obviously, it is a little bit unfortunate that I won't have the availability of taking a Najee Harris, Jonathan Taylor, Dalvin Cook, Austin Eckler. But if I can go ahead and pair together a stud wide receiver and a running back, and then go ahead and maybe even just build a team based on wide receivers, I might be able to find some success here. Of course, the number 1 pick is typically going to be some of these top backs. My number 1 running back on the week is Dalvin Cook. Obviously comes off the board. My number 2 is Najee Harris. It is going to go as such, and you could potentially even use my rankings to go ahead and draft your team accordingly here. But typically, it is a matter of just whether or not you can truly predict some of these teams. Josh Allen going in the first round here. I'm going to go ahead and preemptively say that is far too expensive for my blood. I will go ahead. I will take Austin Eckler. I will follow that with I'm thinking about Christian McCaffrey, and I'm thinking to myself, is he truly going to be like unbelievably unstoppable playing against the Arizona Cardinals this week? It may be tough, but I do think he'll be fine. So I'm going to pair together these two stud running backs. I could have went ahead and grabbed A.J. Brown, who this gentleman just took, but to be honest, if you're going to give me Christian McCaffrey and Austin Eckler on the same team, I'm going to take it. I have to. It's against my religion of fantasy football to go ahead and not take that. So obviously I'm going to get a little bit of a discount at wide receiver, but because I've already selected my one running back and my flex, I will not be looking at running back any longer. I'm looking at wide receivers, tight ends, and quarterbacks as we persist. What I'll go ahead and say before the pick comes back to me is that I typically like to wait till the final round to take my quarterback, and I typically want to go ahead and get guys that are undervalued per se. So somebody like Jalen Hurts, somebody like Carson Wentz, who has an extremely high upside of value, but is being undervalued because of the name brand just not being correlated with overall fantasy success as of late. So when I look at the wide receiver position, I want to obviously go ahead and draft players that are going to give me extreme upside and obviously win me some cash here. So they have to score a lot of points. So when I look at the list to the left of the screen here, obviously I'm looking off in a different direction, mainly because my camera's flipped. But I think Michael Pittman's a great play. I think DK Metcalf's a great play. Keenan Allen as of late has been a target machine for that offense. And with so many teams already picking wide receiver early in this draft, I think they're probably going ahead and avoid wide receiver, which brings back a lot of value to me, just like our regular drafts. When the preseason started, the entire concept was take running back early, take tight end early, and then let the wide receivers that are late there go ahead and fall to you. And if there's a chance that maybe a Chris Godwin plays this weekend, maybe I snag him, throw him on my team, and maybe we find some success this week as a little bit of an undervalued pick. So obviously Ezekiel Elliott going at 3.5, oh my God, that is extremely valuable. But we look at the wide receiver position. I think DK Metcalf is a fantastic play this upcoming weekend with Russell Wilson returning. I want to look at the tight end position. Kyle Pitts is still available, but I do think that there's a very good chance that Pat Freiermuth could be the best play there overall because of his extreme touchdown upside. So I'm going to once again look for the wide receiver position. Deontay Johnson, Michael Pittman, CeeDee Lamb, Terry McLaurin, Tyler Lockett. One of these guys is going to be my guy for the rest of the weekend. I'm going to go with CeeDee Lamb taking on the Atlanta Falcons. I think there's a lot of potential and upside there. Already, I'm really happy with my team. I mean, if I was starting this team on a regular weekend, playing against, one of my 13 leagues, I would just be ecstatic. I'd be joyful as, all could be, because these are 4 stud players. And of course, I think they have good matchups and they have great opportunity overall. Now it's a matter of, hey, where do I go with my next 2 picks? Well, certainly it's just a matter of what falls to me. Because again, I am looking for value, but the tight end position could dry up by the time it gets back to me, as it already has just come off the board there with Kyle Pitts. But I'm looking for Pat Freiermuth. If I'm not able to get that, I'm still looking for touchdown upside. So then I would go with Dawson Knox versus the Jets defense, who cannot stop tight ends to save their lives. And at the quarterback position, I'm still looking for a Jalen Hurts. But maybe if someone wants to undervalue Kyler Murray, he is going to play this weekend, I could very easily steal him, find a lot of value. I'm surprised a lot of people are undervaluing McCaffrey, and it lets me get him in the second round because, again, if in fact we're going to see a negative game script from the Carolina Panthers, then what are we going to see? Well, of course, we're going to see PJ Walker dumping it off to McCaffrey because he's always open. Nonetheless, wow, some people taking some real big stabs here. Somebody just took D'Ernest Johnson. Someone took Michael Carter. Mike Williams coming off the board there. That's a lot of value to be potentially had this upcoming weekend. Again, if it comes to me here, Aaron Rodgers is a fantastic. Oh, there he goes. Okay, I'm going to take Kyler Murray. I think he'll be perfectly fine. I'm not too worried about it this upcoming weekend. And then we'll go ahead and follow that up at the tight end position by taking TJ Hawkinson. To be honest, if we're just looking for yardage, is Fryer still there? Fryer is still here. Man, this is a tough decision. I'm going to take TJ because I think the opportunity of volume is going to certainly be there. And maybe he can accompany that with a red zone attempt and get himself a great week. So, let me go to scoot over it a little bit. To the right of me, we have Kyler Murray, Austin Eckler, Christian McCaffrey, DK Metcalf, CeeDee Lamb, and TJ Hawkinson. As easy as that. I just drafted this team in 5 minutes, and it's a $5 entry with a bunch of prizes if you can go ahead and rank amongst the top of the fantasy football landscape in terms of total fantasy points scored. If you go ahead and draft a player that currently isn't injured, but then is injured prior to the game and is deemed out Underdog Fantasy will swap the player out for you with another respective player either on their team or of similar value. So they'll always help you out in that regard. Either way, I think this is a lot of fun to be had. If you haven't checked out Underdog Fantasy, link down in the description. Use promo code Andrew. If you sign up today, they're willing to match up to $100 of your first deposit. Again, great opportunity and a lot of fun to be had for fantasy football. All right, let's go ahead and shift back and let's finish off today's video by completing the fantasy football gauntlet and bringing our lineups back to glory. I want to thank everybody for watching. Again, these are our 6 hidden gems for the 2021 fantasy football season. Again, week 10 is going to be an interesting one. Hopefully it looks less like week 9, but we have Marvin Jones, Alex Collins, JD McKissic, Tyler Johnson, Mark Ingram, and D'Ernest Johnson as our 6 hidden gems across the multiverse. Thank you everybody for watching, and until next time, tomorrow morning 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, kickoff with Kirikov live stream. I'll see you. Peace.